Welcome to the webinar. Our theme today is interaction of natural and electric light, human-centered light for architecture. I would like to start to tell you about my motivation to lighting design. I do this work since more than 28 years. And for me, it's important to do good lighting schemes to create environments where people feel comfortable, excited, they find an adequateness to what they are doing, and as well to do a light that relates to the place, geographically, cultural, and functional. I also think it's important to go through this process of designing light in a good interaction with clients, colleagues, architects, and to work in fairness, openness, with a professional expertise, and also to have fun, to keep on learning. This slide is the first because it shows that architecture does not work without light, and light does not work without shadows and darkness. So let's have a look on the structure I've prepared. I talked about my motivation already. I would like to show you some of the fields of work as lighting designers. Our inspiration is natural light. Your skills is to observe light. I would like to talk about creativity, technology, project management, and economy. Your tools are some phenomena of light. I can't talk about all of them, but I would like to show you some of them. There's brightness, color temperature, the height of the light points, and sure, there will be the resume. We will enjoy light with others. From the motivation to the fields of work as lighting designers. Sure, everybody knows that a lighting designer does artificial light for buildings. So this is an example, the Elbphilharmonie here in Hamburg, situated in the Hafen City. Huge building and interesting content and use for it. Not everybody thinks when he meets a lighting designer that the lighting designer also works on daylight. It is the first step for each lighting design. It might be artificial light or natural light. Daylight always interferes into our work, and I think it's every time the starting point. But we also do, especially daylighting consultants, calculate it and consult architects how to build and put into proportion to spaces their windows or openings in the roofs. And the next field is master planning light. This example is the Hafen City in Hamburg, where here you see the western part of the Hafen City, and just now we are working on the eastern part of it. It's to create lighting schemes and to give sort of a systematic to bring a nice atmosphere on one side, and then as well a system of light that is easy to maintain. Sometimes we do luminaire design. I don't do that very often because I think the industry already provides a lot of different luminaires, but sometimes we need to do that. This was for the Mercedes-Benz Museum in Stuttgart. And this is something not every lighting designer does, but when I started my profession, I didn't find any book that helped to learn about lighting design from the practical side. So There are several books talking about daylight, talking about artificial light, about light for cities, and sure, we also talked about shadows. And since this year, I started the Brandy Institute to teach light, as I'm convinced that a good lighting designer has to learn lots of different things, and I will come to back this point a little bit later. Our inspiration, as I already said, the natural light, the daylight, is something we should observe, and we always should relate on our lighting schemes. Daylight can be so different. We did the master plan light for the city of Rotterdam, and our first step, sure, was to explore the city and the daylight in the city to find inspiration for our artificial light for the night time. And as you see here, the Erasmus Bridge looks as if it's painted in all different kinds of whitish, yellowish, and bluish colors, but this is not true. It's only daylight, and I did these photos within 2 hours. Rotterdam has a fast change of weather and of natural light. Guess which color it is that you in studio choose for it. It's a very light blue called baby blue, and it has a relation to the sky light, but it reflects as well in white and yellowish. And if you zoom in and look a little bit closer to these pylons of the bridge, you also see that the parts that are directed to the sky are brighter, and the ones directed to Earth are darker. This is not only the effect of light, it's as well the effect of a little difference in the brightness of this baby blue. So Ben van Berkel managed to put this volume and the different shades to make them a bit stronger than daylight does it. I think this is a very subtle way to work with light and with materials, surfaces, and colors. So this is the reason I show it to you. As the light and weather changed so fast in Rotterdam, I also got the opportunity to take a photo of the rainbow. And this is something else we saw in Rotterdam. The daylight with all these different whitish colors deriving from the whole spectrum of our rays of light also was shown in Rotterdam in very different ways. So looking again at the quality of natural light, of daylight, that consists from sunlight and skylight, and we look at this rainbow to see how rich white can be. And this is one of my statements. Quite often, the white light is enough. We don't need that many colors. But white light has so many nuances, as daylight shows it to us, that we can use these nuances quite often and don't need a really very strong color. This was a statement for less is more. And as you can see here a little bit in our typologies for the lighting master plan in Rotterdam, you can see that we don't use lots of colors. We use whitish light for the street light, and we have in the park, we started to have a little bit more warmish light, but we avoided all the sodium vapor lamps with a very yellowish light and the bad color rendering. So white is the light in Rotterdam. And we also used this less is more for brightness. We said it would be nice to have voids of light, to be very discreet with light. as when you look at the sky in the night, you don't see the stars anymore because we have too much light, and our aim or the idea to do light is to see more, but here it's the opposite. We see less if we use too much light. So we zoom in again and we see this part, which has the paths for the pedestrians are lit a little bit. There are also some plants or sometimes art objects that are lit in these paths, but it's not that we have an even light all over the path. You found our inspiration by natural light, and this is only one little aspect of it, but I would like to go on to talk about skills. I think a good lighting designer should start with observing light. It's funny, in a way, if you are infected to look at lighting effects, you find them all over the places and you can enjoy them. I would like to encourage you to watch light as this giraffe in the Museum for Natural History in Paris does. Watch it, keep an eye on it, try to describe it. When you find words for different light effects, you are much more aware about it than only by consuming it. Analyze the lighting situations. This is that lighting designers quite often look up or search for the light source when they see a certain lighting effect. Analyze it. That helps you to be precise later on. And sure, not only work, also enjoy it. Giraffe observes these animals in the main hall of the museum, and she sees something that you can't see. It's that the light is moving, is dimming up and down, so these animals look a little bit as if they are moving. So we also can create illusions with the light. Here, for example, if you look at this image, Dia Beacon in the Dia Beacon, Richard Serra did these sculptures, and if you look at the lighting effects on the sculptures, you see the windows of that room, and if you look properly, you can see that there are parts of the window that are matte, that are diffusing the light a little bit, and these framed parts show the clear glass. So on the projection on the sculptures, these parts that come through the clear glass are much brighter than the other ones. I can show to you how the window looks. Also the clouds, when you look outside through the clear glass, you'll see them sharp edged, and on the other parts, the edges are much softer. This is an architecture in India to observe the sun. This is something very precise, and it needs to have the clear sunlight without clouds, and then you see these shadows moving on a certain grid that gives you information about the sun path. It's this more analytic way to deal with light or to observe it. Still, the skills. If you observe light always and with passion, there are other things you need to know, and this is the creativity, it's the technology, the project management, and the economy. Creativity. Here, I think the most important thing is you have to have a concept, and quite often it's very nice to tell a story. Technology. Explore the conditions of daylight, and then invent and try and calculate. Creativity and technology, you can't separate them from each other. I always think they work together, and it's like geared or interlocked, and you can't insulate it. The project management, that really means you have to have a starting point, and at this point, ask, communicate, and tell everybody you are the expert. And economy, again, you can't insulate it from all the other three parts or aspects. Be always clear about budgets every time and find adequateness. I would like to start with the creativity and show you some slides. As you see, creativity, I think, it has to do with the things you find, you can tell a story about it, you have respect to the place and to the people using your lit spaces, the concept. If you look at the context, the adequateness is not only a question of economy, it's also a question of respect, for example. Atmosphere and emotional aspects is it's one of the richnesses of lighting design that always makes our hearts beat. We have social aspects and then sure regional and global aspects. Look at this image. What does it tell to you? The light tells a story, it shows something. This light is fresh, you also could say cold, it's very clean, and the space seems to be generous and open. This is nearly the opposite of it. It's warm, you could call it sober, and in a way, a little bit darker than the other place. Looking at these images now, try to have them in mind when you look at the next one, because I did a little trick. This is the entrance of a hospital, and sure, when people come there, they need orientation, they need a nice welcome. Sometimes they fear when they are there, or their relatives are there and they want to visit them. And sure, also the people who are working there, they need a certain welcome. And I think the architects found a nice way to give this atmosphere, and we try to enhance that with the light. From one side, you get the daylight, you get this freshness, openness as well, the clean space, which we expect in a hospital. And on the other side, there's this warmish light on the warm wooden wall. You also find orientation in it, much better than on the other slides, as you have one side that is different from the other side. I spoke about the concept. There should be a concept. We are not adding one luminaire to the other one or one lighting effect to the other. So here we tell a story. This is the Archaeological Museum in Hamburg, and it's mainly a museum made for children. As every school kid of 10 years will visit this museum. It belongs to the curriculum of Hamburg schools. Here, you are welcomed by a very bright place. And on the other side, you have a very darkish space. This looks sort of underground, and it has different islands of light. And that is the reason. The upper part is the first floor. The lower part is the ground floor. Where this man stands, he looks down to the ground floor. So there is a relation between first floor and ground floor. In the first floor, you see the present time. So children know exactly all these things that are exhibited there, and they have a relation to the parts you see on the lower floor. So it starts to be this museum puts a relation for the children or relates to their own experiences in our time to understand these archaeological exhibits. As, for example, one theme, medicine in the daylight. And then you can look downwards, I'm sure as well. You also can go then downwards and explore this space. And our idea of the lighting design was really to have one island of light to the next one. So these children can go from one place to the next. And each time they find something new, something interesting, and as well, they have these spots where they can walk from one to the next. The next part I would like to show you is not only the creativity, there's also the technical side. You have to explore the conditions of daylight, and this can be something really technical, but in the meantime, it has to do with the concept and the creativity of a project. Sure, technology. I mean, this is only some of the aspects. You could find more and more. The optics. Optics is an interesting part as well. The materials, controls, the building technology, so many aspects of it. And we always have to be informed about all the technological process. The Mercedes-Benz Museum, I think, is a nice example to show how a concept was made and then how we had to calculate and to have to use different techniques to be very precise about daylight. It was built to show a huge collection of cars, and the architects here in studio had this concept that you see all these cars are shown in a landscape. As a car inside of a house is not that natural. Normally we use cars outside. So to create this landscape, you see the plan of the museum as well as certain section where you already can see that there are two kinds of exhibition spaces. The red ones are those that are really dark, and you have this concept for a museum light that is this dark museum, like a theater, where you don't create a lot of light, and you have these spots on the exhibits, and the space, in a way, is not that important. And then you have this other part, this grayish part, where we have daylight from three sides, which can cause problems, as daylight is always that strong, and if we want to show these cars in that strong daylight, in a way we have to compete with daylight with our, to produce a lot of light with our luminaires. So we started looking at daylight. You see again these parts, the very blue parts are the dark spaces, and on the right hand side you see the spaces with the glass facade and daylight from the outside. And you also can see our problems. We have the biggest problems and these parts close to the atrium, where we have this bluish now, where we have really a very dark part of that room, and we need to lit this as well as the room, and again also the cars. We calculated, because our client was worrying that the contrast between the dark rooms and the bright rooms could be too strong. So you would see these images where you come from a dark room and it starts that you have a little part where daylight enters the space. We calculated it, and as well we were able to build a model. So we had two proofs for our results. We had a model where we tested in this model. We tested the daylight and the daylight input and compared it then with these calculations by the computer to find really a good result. We as well did mock-ups then, and the results in the darkroom were these spaces where we lit the cars, where the room is not that important, and where we also had always one object that is this sort of chandelier in the middle of the space to give a certain atmosphere of that time of these cars that are shown there. And these are the daylit spaces. We had the problem that we had a lot of daylight, and the room and the back part did not get that much daylight. And there was a very nice point that the architects did the floor of this room very bright, so we get reflections from the floor again back to the ceiling, and the transition from bright to less bright are much softer than it would be otherwise. Also, the artificial light is reflected by the floor back to the ceiling. So we go on to the next part, the project management. In the project management, I think quite often, especially when we start our profession, we really should be clear about how we approach the project, and that also means that we have to ask. We have to talk about the scope of work, about the interfaces. This is a very important thing, as in a team that designs the building, there are so many interfaces, and if you're not clear about it, it could happen that nobody does this part, or two people do it or more, and there is big confusion. The stakeholders, the communication, all these parts, I think, should be trained quite early, and more experienced, older people can work very good with less experienced, younger people, because then a team has the richness of all experience and of all skills. Now in a way, I bring two aspects together. It's on one side the project management that talks about different stages of a design process, and on the other side, I want to talk about the tools we have. And I only choose three of the phenomena of light we have, so much more, but brightness, for example. Going back to observation, our client approached us because they had such enormous electricity bill that they said, please, we need another kind of luminaire within this church, the Gedächtniskirche in Berlin, designed by Egon Eiermann, was built in the early 60s of the last century. And this glass sucks so much light that you can put really powerful luminaires inside and still you don't get that much outside. We observed the situation, and I think you also see it. One of the reasons that we don't see this bluish church room and this nice blue is that there's too much light on the old tower of the church beside. It's not precise. So after this observation, we said, okay, how would it look if we do it like that? The ruin now, the tower doesn't get light, but we cleaned this blue building from all this bright light that was there before. And sure, that was not the only point, but one very effective point. Because inside of this facade, as you see here, the double facade, and you see one glass wall to the outside and the other glass wall to the inside. So also inside of this room, you have the nice effect of this glowing blue facade. And sure, we were able to reduce the electricity bill by putting LEDs inside. We did a lot of tests also to spread that light in a proper way and in an even way inside. But the other point was to avoid too much light outside. And sure, in a way we changed our commission because we didn't do only the light for this blue glass building. We said, switch off that light in the tower, and now we put some new and other precise light on the tower again. So this is what we did. Here we started to tell a story, because the ruin is a memorial to war, and we, by changing our light on this ruin, we also really tell the story about the destruction of the building and how different these parts can be. Not only brightness, also color temperature is an issue. And as we work a lot in Asia, this is the National Bank in Malaysia, color temperature is an issue that is also depending on your culture and on your perception of daylight, which is quite different places of the world. There in Malaysia, the evening, the dusk and dawn is not that long as we have it here in Northern Europe. So people are used to a very brightish light because it's so fast that it gets dark that they switch on their bright and sort of bluish, very coldish light, as we would say here in the north. So the first thing they said to me, Ulrike, please don't bring your warmish North European light. We like it coldish. So that is one of the issues in color temperature. And when we are here in the north, sure, we see at the River Elbe, for example, the wonderful orange sunset. Our eyes get adapted to the darkness. So we switch on our artificial light much later, and then we are already used to less light, to this warmish light, and we prefer the warmish light. I showed here again these different color temperatures during the day. So sure, I have to relate to the place where I work and to listen carefully to my clients and to the people who use the buildings. Another point which is so important to the atmosphere we create is the height of the light point. That has a reason again. It's not only the color temperature you see on this image. The sun also comes from different angles, and at noon the sun comes really very high. This is something that creates an atmosphere that is more generous, it's fresher. It could be also sometimes a little bit anonymous. In the evenings or in the mornings, it's much cozier, the light is lower, and it comes to these points where it reminds us of the fireplace. So I believe really that evolutionary we are used to these atmospheres that derive from daylight and our experiences. So this would be an example for a fresher light. for a general light, which is more generous, shows an open space, and creates this atmosphere. Zooming in, I don't see the image. Okay, I go to the next one. The same building, but there's a restaurant. And here we put much lower light points. You see it at the bar there in the background, or also underneath of these handrails, there's a lower light, and the people of the restaurant also use candles. These are the luminaires above the bar. This low light gives you this atmosphere that is intimate, and it's cozier and might be very nice during the evening. And here you have these two slides beside of each other. One room that gets daylight from a window, which is more in the upper part of the wall, very high light. It's a big space with a lot of white in it, where you could imagine a lot of people during the day, during the conference, to use this room. And the other is the warmish one, where, sure, we also have different colors, but the light points are much lower. It comes as well to this already mentioned fireplace, which is this very emotional, very atmospheric image or experience we all have. It was nice for us to do a concept for the Neues Palais in the Castle Sanssouci in Potsdam, close to Berlin, where we found exactly these principles. If Friedrich, the one who lived in this, did his private life in this building, he used these candles he could carry from place to place, and he put them onto very low furniture. So it's the low light point, lower than your eyes. If he had audiences and people who came, but it was sort of semi-public event, they switched on the luminaires, the candles that were fixed on the wall, a little bit higher. And then, if it was a big festivity, lots of people, really very public, very representing, then the big chandeliers suspended from the ceilings were used. These are the principles. And here you see he was playing the flute quite often. And again, you see all these three kinds of light sources and these three kinds of different heights of these light points. I think it's a very easy tool of lighting design. It works quite perfect. And we use that in the Friedrichsbad, where again, also coming back to my aspect of the project management, the client said, look, we have different places that are not so comfortable. What could you do with light? Different spaces in this thermal bath. And we said there should be only some little points where we change something. It's not necessary to change everything. In the middle, you see the sort of central bath, and in a way, it tries to quote the Pantheon. You have this light source in the middle of the room, under this cupola, where in the Pantheon sunlight comes through, and we all know this example. But here, in this case, it looked very different. This is what you saw above the glass part in the center of this room. There were suspended luminaires and this glass was fritted, so it was a diffuse light that didn't manage to reach the floor or the lower part of that room. You see how it looked before when you looked up, and then you see what we did. We opened one of these glasses, put some clear glass into it, and then had a projector that really put a precise circle of light that would remind you on the light that the sun puts into the pantheon as a circle when the sun shines and gets into it. And I think if you compare these two photos, you see that there was a sort of dull and not very inviting atmosphere before on the left-hand side. On the right-hand side, you see the brilliance of this projector, and you see again reflections in the pool, which makes it, on one side, more personal. The light is closer to people, and as well, it makes it much more interesting. And it was one of my nicest experiences to see our client standing at one of these doors. On one side, this room that we changed in terms of light, and then on the other side, a smaller room where the light was still the old way. And he stood between that, always looked into one room and then into the other, and said, how easy on one side, and what a big, big change is this, and how brilliant and how nice is the atmosphere now with the new lighting. So sometimes it's not a big effort to change a lighting situation. And this is always good to communicate to our clients. The communication also means to show it. It's easy when he stands there and can compare the new effect with the old situation. And another comparison is, or another zooming in is, that you see on the left-hand side the sort of matte diffuse light that doesn't show also the very nice details of this architecture, and in the other situation some shadows, the volume, and all the nice sculpturing of this column. Also, this is a question of height of the light point, or not only, that does not mean only the height of the light source as well. It could also mean where the light is able to reflect something. As you see on the upper photo, there's a nice chandelier which has a diameter of about 8 meters. To lower it down and then to climb with the ladder inside is good fun. But this light only meets the upper part of that room. But people use the lower part in it. So we said we integrate into the chandelier some downlights that are directed really down, sort of traveling through all that distance down to the floor, and then you see suddenly the floor is bright. Also, there's some light on the tables, so people feel much more comfortable in this room and don't get the feeling to be sort of in an emptied swimming pool or something like that. And here you see the effect again on that floor. We did some other installations as well, but this was the main part that changed the atmosphere. My resume. Going through the process of lighting design and also talking about different effects and tools of lighting design. My resume is as you see it here. We need to have a concept, and we also have to communicate it in a nice way to our clients, to the architects. So we need to draw. As you see here, we did in the Grande Institute, we did these drawings with white pencil on black cardboard, very easy way to show quite fast what you are meaning. Also to try the light, to see it, to test it for yourself, to describe these effects you find, and again, to communicate it to your client. It's so much easier to explain your ideas by showing the light instead of showing visualizations. It all comes together, but the proper light always is the easiest to understand. And again, going further on, true, you do your concept as well in sketches, in sections of buildings. You define the different zones of light. You think about the daylight that enters the building, and then this is something that can come out of it. To filter light not only by the glass part as well as the massive part of a certain building. This was a competition we did together with Started. And then in the end, it can happen that people enjoy this place. That it's a place where people meet, where they communicate, where they have fun. They are attracted by the light. They come together, and this is in the center of Berlin. But it also could be in the countryside, and again, people use light in the way to bring them together and to find a meeting point. So what is important for every lighting designer, share it with others and enjoy light together with others. Thank you.